I knew I was actually going to be having to drive back to Orlando the same day that I harvested the turkey. And I was like, man, this just might not happen. Two of my kids, I have five, are big into hunting. The other ones want to be outside, they want to do it. What I realized is nobody really took me a lot when I was growing up. So I'm going to take my kids more times than they can count. Even if they're not hunting, just being like sitting with me in the stand when I'm hunting, being a part of it. When I see my kids hunting, I'm like, I'm just a link in the chain. And what are they going to say about me? I got to make my stories. There's a lot of women that might never hunt. I talked to my grandma. She didn't really hunt, but she cooked all of the game, like women still want to know how to cook it.
Tejas Hunt Club Podcast is the podcast for you and you and you and you.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Tejas Hunt Club Podcast. We are so glad you're here. Today, you have me as your host, Meagan McEllier, and I'm so honored to have Bethany Beathard on with me today. She is an avid outdoorsman. She is a freelance writer, a mom of five, military wife. She also just harvested a beautiful turkey in Florida, and so I brought her on to talk about that story and honestly just introduce her to you guys because she's an amazing person and she's been real fun to follow since I've met her. So Bethany, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I am super excited to be here. Yeah, I've had a lot going on lately and got my first Osceola. It was an amazing hunt. And yeah, I'm just out here being a mom and promoting women in the outdoors and that moms can still go out there and do it, even if you have five kids and homeschool and do all the things. So, yeah, I'm super excited to share my story. And yeah, I do a lot of freelance writing for a lot of publications and, I'm just out there sharing writing and, content at the same time. So it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually met Bethany through the Professional Outdoor Media Association. If you guys listen to the podcast, you've heard us bring this up multiple times. This organization has introduced us to not only Bethany, but a lot of other people in the industry who are always out in the outdoors, but also contributing to conservation and education around conservation efforts in many states around the US, and if not internationally. So just to give a little background on POMA, so the conference itself was something that we do every year. But Bethany and I met, I believe, 2 years ago, and then we touched base again last year, and we're both attending it this year as well in May. If you're interested in joining us this year, registration does close on April 22nd, so be sure to reach out to one of us, or you can DM Tejas Hunt Club on Instagram, and we'll give you all the info. So the main reason I reached out to Bethany was because I saw a picture on Instagram of an amazing, huge, beautiful bird that she was able to harvest in Florida this year. And it was your first Osceola, correct? That's what you said?
Yes, my first, actually, like my second turkey ever. Like I've been turkey hunting, I say hunting for years. Um, but as a mom, it feels like it's such a short season. So I'd only have, one day here, one day there. Um, so 4 years ago, I started turkey hunting. I had my first or my fifth kid. I was like big pregnant. So that just ended up not happening. And then I went 3 years ago. My husband was deployed. All of my kids, I went hunting the next day. All of my kids came down with strep throat. And so it's just like after another, I just was not getting the time. And that's kind of like the challenge of a hunting mom is you really have to work around not only childcare, but now like I'm a military wife too. So my husband's deployed, all my kids got sick, and it just kept pushing back that, just a short time of turkey season. So yeah, this last year I actually had 2 days. Me and my friend, she was 6 months pregnant. We harvested two birds. It was great. And but yeah, this year I had been sharing on social media, and I got picked up by Valor and Honor Outdoors. They're an organization that provides outdoor experiences for military and also their families, veterans, and first responders. And not very many places do stuff for military wives. So it was really great to be included on that. And yeah, they sent me down to Florida, and man, it was like I couldn't ask for a better hunt, even though there was like disappointments when it like happened, like we got there. I was a 2 day hunt, by the way. I was there for 2 days and that was it. So it was like kind of like pressure. Um,
Small window.
and yeah, I went with Shane Martinez. He is, well, I met him there. He's a world-class caller. And then I had my friend Tiffany that came down to video for me. And yeah, we show up the first day and we already see birds, which was great because that's like half the battle. But they were just like already doing their thing, didn't care to come in. So we kind of watched them and waited for them to roost. And then the next day, we kind of had a plan where they were going to kind of come down. And in Florida, you can't hunt within 100 yards of a feeder, turkey within 100 yards of a feeder. So, kind of getting a game plan where the owner had a feeder and the turkeys, obviously, that's where they were the whole first day. So we're like trying to intercept before they go over there. And yeah, they came down. One of the things that like I love about it is I got some footage of this, but Shane threw an owl call in the morning and we had these owls respond and they started like laughing at each other. And it was just like a beautiful moment of just like not quite sunrise and just hearing these owls like going off. And it was just a really great experience. Um, but yeah, I ended up, we watched some hens come down and they went towards the back of the property and we're hearing like distant gobbles, but the night before we had seen two longbeards and we were like, we know that they're in this area. And yeah, they came down but worked behind us. I mean like 15 yards behind us. And I'm like, I can't move or they're going to spook. And so they end up going to that feeder and we're like, okay, we hear a gobble in the back of the property. And we're like, we're just gonna like he's working himself without us even being there. And so we're like, let's just go back there and see if we can get something going. So we're going back there. We seen some hens and we can hear him, we can't see him. So we get set up. And so I'm facing where we're hearing him come from. And Shane was behind me and he whispered to Tiffany. I didn't even hear him. And he said to the right. And she says, hey, he says to the right. Well, I'm thinking where I'm facing to the right, like he must see something because he was a little bit further back. No, like directly to the right within like 15 yards is like 10 jakes and they're looking right at me and I'm like, oh my goodness. And there's two long beards with them and they're paying attention to the decoy. And so it was a bit of a time. I don't know, like everybody with me was like, oh my gosh, is she going to shoot? What's going to happen? But I was trying to like obviously not spook them. So talking to myself in my head, like, don't rush anything. And yeah, hammer down, got him. And it was an amazing experience. Beautiful bird. And actually, this is him right
Oh,
here.
is that
If you
him?
can't see, I've already got it
Yeah.
mounted. Yeah. So
So you mentioned that there was a group of 10 jakes, right? And then there was two longbeards hanging out with them. And the thing about turkeys is they can see so well. Like that's their
Yes.
heightened sense, right? So I can understand that if they're staring right at you, that you're just like kind of frozen for a second. But I'm assuming you were able to at least look and see, you said there was two bearded toms. And so were they ahead
Yes.
of them,
So the
in
toms
them?
were
Like, did
kind
they separate? Like, how did?
They were in the front and we had a strut and decoy out. So they were kind of, one was strutting, the other one was kind of keeping the Jakes back, like, let us do this, And the Jakes definitely noticed me. The Toms were so focused. There was also a pine tree and like a group of palmettos that were kind of masking where I was a little bit. So, the toms were already so far ahead by the time that I even noticed them. Like that's what Shane was like. I didn't even see him until they popped out. There was a whole bunch of palmettos, and so yeah, they were. I just waited until they were fanned out and they turned away from me, and then that's when I made like my most adjustments. I wasn't as worried about the jakes because the toms didn't want them to go where they were. So they were kind of moving around anyway, but I definitely spooked them a couple times. Um, but the toms were busy doing their business. So it worked out for me. But yeah, they were, I mean, it was just like one of those times they came in silent. So you don't even know. And,
Mhm.
man, you just like Osceola is a lot different than Rios that I've hunted in the past. Like they just, Rios are a little bit louder, we're a little bit more obnoxious. And I mean, Osceolas, I felt like they were loud in the morning and then nothing, like just silent. And it was just different. That's what I love about growing, I guess, as a sportswoman is, you might be a master in one thing, but really you're not in the other, or you just every hunt I take away something, even if there's not a harvest. Um, and I was at the point where I knew I was actually going to be having to drive back to Orlando the same day that I harvested the turkey. And I was like, man, this just might not happen. So I was just super blessed to have the
Mhm.
experience and it turned out the way it did. It's like makes it so much more memorable and valuable because, I worked for that and it could have been ruined if I just, I think like the patience. So yeah, I have all that recorded
Yeah.
on the hunt video, but uh and Tiffany was like, I was just thinking like, man, is she gonna shoot? Like what's gonna happen? Like, and I was like, I'm gonna wait for the opportunity. So yeah, it was fun.
Well, good. It sounds like you caught them on a good weekend, right? Because it's not every single weekend that those toms are so turned on and like strutting everywhere and brushing their wings on the ground. Like you don't see that every single weekend of turkey season, right? I mean, that's something that I experienced on my first hunt. Much like you, it was Rio, so they were a little bit louder, like you said. But there was one point where I didn't realize that they were literally 10 yards away from me to my left. And it was pretty funny because after I was successful, my buddy Jared, he was just like, when I said he was next to you, I meant like, do not move. He is right next to you. So those experiences can be really cool when they get on those crazy weekends or a week or however it is, that long period of time. The short window that you get of them being so active is so fun to
Hmm.
experience. And just even if you're just witnessing it, much less hunting it.
Yeah. I mean, and that was there was two Toms, but only one of them was strutting. The other one had like, I mean, he was just walking along, and they were super quiet. And by the time that I think it was like 8:40. I say like we were out there for a while, but we really weren't. But we had been out there before dark, and they were more vocal before coming down from the roost. And by the time that they got to the ground, there was a little bit of, yelping and stuff, but for the most part, they just kind of quieted down. Besides that one gobble that we went and chased, and then we never even seen that Tom. So it was just that's kind of how it goes. So turkey hunting, turkeys are turkeys, and you're just along for
Yeah.
the ride, I guess.
And you don't get it unless you do it. That's the thing. And I didn't get
Yeah.
it. I didn't understand the hype. I didn't, I was just like, turkeys, like really what? And growing up here, like I would see them in the cow pasture, but they didn't look like an interesting bird, or I didn't know anything about them. And so it's so cool to see that like there's other women out there who are pursuing them. Because for the most part, I see men that are turkey hunting. There's very few women that
Hmm.
hunt, much less that hunt turkeys. So seeing you out there was really exciting for me. Well, cool. So you harvested your tom. I did see the video clip that you put up, and you were just ecstatic. I mean, that was one of those moments where I'm sure you said you only had 2 days. The pressure was on. So how did that feel as far as like, holy crap, like this worked?
So I kind of put the video that you're saying. I put like a video out saying like I might have the opportunity to do a grand slam, and I knew that Florida, the Osceola was going to be the hardest thing like to overcome. And so the fact that that kind of lined up, I was like, oh, like this might really happen. I still have like some logistics and some stuff to like get through, but like in that moment, I'm like, okay, like I've done one, like the first things kind of first milestone hit. And just whenever you can, we love hunting. There's different facets of hunting that I love. The heritage, I talk a lot about that. I love that, I'm out there as a mom, but like when you get to really put your skills to the test, because I mean, in that moment, like you said, turkeys can see everything, and you're just like, I could have messed that all up, like I could have like rushed it, because I've done that before. I've rushed it. Those times happen. And uh, that almost happened to me last year on my turkey hunt. And so I'm like, you learn the success of, putting your efforts and your techniques and your tactics to the test and like coming up on top. It's like, it's a big accomplishment, so it just proves to yourself, like, I did that for me and I was able to do that. And so, yeah, it was just an amazing hunt. I'm still on the high from it. So
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And I mean, you're right. It wouldn't be as rewarding if it wasn't hard.
yeah.
It's so hard. And that's with anything, really. But I mean, it's just one of those. I love turkey hunting now because I'm not doing the traditional. I grew up hunting deer from a blind. Like,
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that. There's still a time and place for it, especially in Texas.
Yeah.
Ask anybody down here. But for the most part, it's just the running and gunning and trying to be more stealthy. It just seems more in tune with like our human nature, right? And
Hmm.
so you're right. I mean, it probably feels amazing, and it always has for man to harvest a game meat or whatever it may be. So glad to hear that you had that experience and that you kind of had that inkling of a grand slam. So dive a little bit into that as far as like, is that on the horizon? What do you think? Like, what are the biggest challenges? Because I already know some of them like are given with the kiddos, but
Yes.
just kind of dive into that and where you're at with that process.
So there's a lot. I feel like I'm juggling a lot. All the hunts are lined up. It's the other logistics as far as like getting there, funding. My husband, he's in the military. He's actually switching jobs within installation right now. So like that's like, his time's dedicated there. We have 5 kids. We homeschool. So it's not just getting your kids childcare like before and after school. It's all day. I have all 5 of my kids are here at the house. Um, so like the logistics of that, we're just funding in general, getting that going. And so, yeah, my next hunt is actually going to be in North Carolina at the Bub Jackson Hunting Preserve. So that's awesome. I was invited up there to hunt, and that's going to be interesting too, because it's just every place that you go, it's like every state, the way that you hunt the birds, the way that they interact. So it's just like you have to adapt to their behavior there. And then the Rio will probably be either here in Oklahoma on private property, or I hunt a military installation, and that's a draw. So I actually have my 10-year-old son hit the youth weekends first, entered in. So we might see some content for me hunting, and he's really hoping to get his first turkey this year. So that's exciting. And so I'll just be happy for him to do that, So we'll
Yeah,
see. And then the
absolutely.
Merriam is the last one. So, well, I'm like, I know it's there, it's attainable. So if it happens, I'll be super ecstatic. If it doesn't, I will still be at least 50% to my lifetime Grand Slam. So it's exciting.
Oh, very. So as far as, access to these properties, I know you mentioned Valor and Honor, right?
Hmm.
Was the one that took you to Florida.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other organizations that you were working with or sponsorships that you're working with? I know DCG is one of the ones you work with, correct?
Yeah, DSG, DSG Outerwear is actually a apparel company for women. And it's all for women. And I've talked a lot about them just because my main target audience, as far as a freelancer content creator, is women, the everyday woman. I say that a lot. Like, I aim for the everyday woman, and because that is me, I want to follow people that are doing life like how I'm doing, and so I create content for other moms that are doing life too. Anyways, DSG is not the afterthought. A lot of camo companies have a women's line or a used line, but that's really 10% of the business. 90% is the male audience. And so for an apparel company that has license for Mossy Oak and Realtree to market 100% to women, I love it. And they're making quality gear. And so, yeah, that's one of my main sponsorships. And I only really have a few sponsorships, and I don't know, that's kind of how it's worked recently. But Valor and Honor, I'm on their pro staff, and that's my only hunt right now for them. And then the Bub Jackson is actually, I was invited up for as a hunting preserve. I don't know if you're familiar with the Jackson family, but like the great grandpa was born a slave, and after slavery became a hunt. Well, I guess he was always a hunter, but he primarily hunted, and then all passed down through generations to Bub Jackson Jr., who bought the hunting preserve, and he was known for he recently has passed, but he's known for having the first, I guess, black hunting TV show, and has a full body mount collection. And so, yeah, it's a women's hunt that I was invited up there for. So that's going to be exciting. And then, but primarily, most of my hunts, I hunt a military installation here in Oklahoma. And most of them are draw. I am lucky because I do have elk draw, which is the coveted hunt, because it's draw for everybody, but I can draw more than once in my lifetime. I don't know if you're familiar with Southwest Oklahoma, but it's the only place you can hunt elk in Oklahoma is the Wichita Mountain Range. And they do a draw on the refuge for civilians, but the post has their own wildlife biologists, their own draws, and all those things. And so, as a military spouse, I have access to that, and that's primarily where I do hunt.
Oh, amazing. And I honestly know I don't know much about Oklahoma. My sister is actually a freshman at OSU right now, so I've been up there more often than I usually am. But so you're saying it's just like the southwest corner, basically, is the only area. I didn't even know there was elk in Oklahoma, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. So actually, Oklahoma elk are extinct. So they used to really did have elk here. And they were hunted to extinction. So the elk that we have here are actually a transplant from the Wyoming herd, and they have fostered the herd enough to where they actually are available for tags. So if you live in the area of private property, you can just get a tag. But primarily is the draw, which is once in a lifetime, which is the refuge. And then the military installation has some regulations as far as how many times you can draw. So active duty can hunt every year. So the active duty can draw every year. And retirees, spouses, if you harvest, you have to sit out a year and then you can put in for the draw. So I harvested a cow elk 3 years ago. And so this past year I entered the draw, and since I have to sit out, I passed up cow tags because I want to try to get a bull.
The bull elk, yeah.
Yeah. And I won a couple times, but it just didn't happen for me this year. So maybe this next upcoming year, we'll see. But yeah, I love elk hunting. I think it's if you follow me on social media, everybody, it's like a joke because I go deer hunting and elk are always there. And they're like, man, I wish I could just watch them. I was like, I love watching them. I just wish I could watch them during the time that I have a tag for them. So, yeah, it's a different season here in Oklahoma when you can harvest them and stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, I can imagine if they're transplants for sure. It's probably super regulated compared to any of the public draw land in Colorado, New Mexico, and all that.
A lot of people don't know Oklahoma has antelope. We have bear. There's a lot of game here in Oklahoma. And it's been kind of on the news recently, but they upped their like non-resident tags and stuff like that. But we do have a lot. And I think it was the waterfowl was a big deal. I believe that the flyway shifted a little bit into Oklahoma. And yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity in Oklahoma.
Yeah. And I mean, between Kansas and Texas, you'd think that would be perfect in certain periods of time, certain times of the season. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of go back to like where this all started. Where did you grow up and how did you find your passion just for being outside in general? And then how did that progress into hunting, or how did you get introduced to hunting?
Yeah, so I grew up actually by OSU. It's Ponca City. I'm actually was born in Arizona, but I grew up most of my life here in Oklahoma. And I have a rich hunting heritage. A lot of people don't know. I do share about it from time to time. My great great grandpa he was part of the Mexican jaguar predator control program. So I have a lot of pictures of him with Mexican jaguars, and it's just been something that's passed down through the generations. And to my grandpa, who had all girls, which was my mom and her, and to him, it was a family legacy and he wanted it to be preserved. So he taught his daughters everything. And then that bled into me. And I didn't really get taken hunting a lot growing up. I guess I did a couple of times. I grew up on 55 acres, so I'm a farm girl. My grandpa was a watermelon farmer, and we had all types of livestock and animals. And so for me, small game, I grew up really as a marksman, I guess, because we were able to kind of target shoot whenever we wanted to.
Hmm.
And, we had our own skeet shoot on our property. So it wasn't something that was not tangible to me. My grandpa visited every year, and it was kind of like, what is he going to have? What kind of meat is he going to bring? Because it was just him and my grandma. So he would always bring like an ice chest full of
Oh, heck yeah.
moose or elk or whatever. Yeah. And so
Yes.
it was just, that was the culture that I grew up in. But I didn't really get to hunt. So as an adult, I was telling my husband, I was like, this is something that I really want to do. And I feel like I have all this knowledge for, but there's no practicality. I'm not like, putting it in practice. And we moved to, see, our third duty station was in Jacksonville, Florida. And my husband's boss became like this hunting mentor. And we ended up buying into the lease that they were a part of in Georgia. And that's when I really kind of started sharing on social media my outdoor side of life. And it just, from there, is kind of like what bled me into here. And we just started hunting. We did a lot of dogs, hunting with dogs and hogs. And when I moved back to Oklahoma, I was like, okay, like I'm going to do it. And so that was my first year I harvested the cow elk solo because I was by myself. Spouses can't have people with them as per the old regular solo
Oh, okay.
hunting. So a lot of solo hunting. And yeah, I just kind of took off from there. So every year I've just like added something new. For me, I want it to be a well-rounded sportswoman. I look at the generations. I look at my grandpa. I'm like, he hunted everything, but he really was a muzzleloader hunter. And then
Hmm.
my great grandpa did a lot of stuff, but he was a deep sea fisher. My mom just gave me a box full of wooden deep sea fishing lures to hang up in my boys' room. So I'm gonna make like a
Wow.
shadow box. So
Yeah.
and I have a trap from my great great grandpa. So it's like each generation kind of had their own thing that they did. And so now I'm like, when I see my kids hunting, I'm like, I'm just a link in the chain. And what are they going to say about me? I got to make my story. So yeah,
Yes. Oh my God, I love that so much. That is amazing. I didn't know you had a rich hunting history at all.
yeah,
And I mean, that's just, and the very end of that, what you just said about like being a link in the chain, right? It's a responsibility at that
yeah.
point, right? And it's something that to at least offer that passion, right? So it's
Hmm.
not going to be for everybody, but it's something that you've respected and honored about your family legacy, and I think that's so cool. I love that. I love to hear that
Yeah.
too.
I just wrote an article for the NWTF and the tagline. I mean, they've kind of ran with it. But I said, not every kid is going to be a hunter, but they all should be conservationists.
Yes.
And there's ways that we can get our kids involved. I write a lot about outdoor kids. Actually, I have like a monthly column at Everest Outdoor News that's just about outdoor kids, getting your kids outdoors. And the benefits of that. Two of my kids, I have five, are big into hunting. The other ones want to be outside, they want to do it. They kind of have their own facets. My oldest has autism and he wants to do hunts, but he would rather do scouting. He would rather go
Yeah.
hiking, shed hunting, like those kind of tangible things. My 10-year-old and my 8-year-old have both harvested waterfowl already, and my 10-year-old is going to be going into the turkey hunt, and then my 8-year-old, she'll be old enough to hunt on post by the time that deer season rolls around. So they probably went with me the most. And what I realized is nobody really took me a lot when I was growing up. So I'm going to take my kids more times than they can count. Even if they're not hunting, just being like sitting with me in the stand when I'm hunting, being a part of it, maybe lessens my harvest odds. But this past year, I didn't harvest. I took my son out and we have elk within 15 yards. They have no idea that we're there. He is shaking like a leaf. And it was such a good experience to teach him how to raise his, binoculars without them noticing, wait until they put their head down. It was just like I could really talk to him through. We got to see two bulls kind of, go back and forth, hitting each other. And it was just an awesome experience that like he will never forget that,
Yeah.
and we were deer hunting, obviously, that's why the elk were there. But that's why I'm doing it, and that's why I write. That's what pushes me. And not only for that, but if we aren't sharing it with the next generation, if we're not diversitizing who we're marketing to, who we're writing about, then we're not going to have the vote to protect this way of life for my grandkids. There'll be no other link. There will be no other continuation, because hunters are the forefront of what's keeping, firearms and everything in our hands. So it's important that we
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah, and I think your point about just being in the proximity of it, right, is
Hmm.
you're learning about patience. You're learning about, I mean, the fact that when you're outside, you feel better. Like you quite literally, there's not a human I know who doesn't feel better when they spend time outside.
Hmm.
And so that's just something that I love. And the fact that you say it's more important for the next generation because of conservation, it's not necessarily hunting. That's something people don't understand. Like
Yeah.
90% of what we do is for conservation, not necessarily just a grip and grin picture. I mean, that's not, it's just a piece of it. It's just a piece
Hmm.
of it. Now, feeding your family is a big piece of it as well. And so I wanted to just kind of dive in a little bit. I know you're a homesteader as well. I've
Yeah.
been trying, I envy all of your canning videos and your preservation. And so, I mean, talk a little bit about, I mean, how is it to feed 5 kids, and how much is hunting helped with that process? Or like, what do you enjoy the most about bringing that home to your family and being a provider in that way?
Oh man, I can't express like the year that I killed the cow elk. Man, she was like 279 pounds of meat, and like that
Huge.
was it's huge, and that fed our family for like a year. Like, I didn't even buy beef, I think, like that whole year. It saves so much on just cost, but just like the health of what I feed my kids. And, going into like homesteading, that's another reason that pushes me to do it, is I want them to have um, quality food that they and learn the skills like they might not ever can. We do a lot of foraging here for sand plums. It's called the chickasha plum. I don't know if do you guys have those down? Maybe a little bit, yeah.
I don't know. I actually tried to go look and see what those were because I saw your video and I was like, oh man, we have plum trees and we have pear
Yeah.
trees. Probably more pear trees. If I'm thinking when I was growing up, we had like 3 pear trees on our property. But I'm not sure about the plums.
Yeah, they grow in like a bush, and they just like they're wild. The Native Americans used to cultivate them, and my parents have a small patch on their property. So my mom will go and pick them, and then we'll can them or freeze them and then can them in the wintertime. And yeah, like getting my kids out there to forage and then actually get to eat the jelly all year long and like have that. And then I garden, and for me, it's not necessarily about living like a traditional way of life. Like I love that old tradition, but I also like I feel like they're just lost skills that are valuable to like know and learn. And um, I mean, I don't know, just to like something like working with your hands. Hunting is just another way that I feed my family. I still use the grocery store, but I would like to distance myself less grocery store, more wild and woods and gardens. And it's
Yeah.
work. It is work. It's a team. And with my kids, I'm like, hey, you know, this is could be your 4-H project. This could be, we homeschool. So how can we use doing, hunting, gardening, all these things to benefit you to be a better citizen? How can we use this to benefit you to be more skilled? And enlisting the help of my kids as much as they want to be involved is helpful. And yeah, it's just like I'm like, well, I don't know, this is what I want to do. And I feel like that's why I try to do this. Hunting's a big part of what I do, but sharing the full cycle, starting with conservation and ending with feeding my family, there's a lot of things that are in between
Mhm.
that as far as gear, gardening and homesteading, preserving, butchering, freezing. There's just so many things that you could go off on. Hunting's just kind of like the center hub, and there's like a lot of things on both ends of that happen. And so it's important for me to not only just talk about hunting, but also talk about, what gear I'm using, how I'm going to save the meat, what I plan on cooking, the dishes. A lot of people, there's a lot of women that might never hunt. I talked to my grandma. She didn't really hunt, but she cooked all of the game, like women
Mm-hmm.
still want to know how to cook it, and so for me, I try to talk about both ends of that. Maybe you might not be the one that goes and gets it, but you're going to be the one that cooks it, and yeah.
Oh yeah, and I try to do that too. I always forget, but I try to do like if we're using our pheasant for us. I made fried pheasant sandwiches. They're amazing. Pheasant's a little tricky, but like any of our venison recipes, any of like anything that we have from, especially Axis. I love Axis. So anytime I cook that, I usually talk about it. But that is so important too. Even like you said, even if they're not hunting,
Hmm.
again, conservationist education, getting involved, like it's just another arm, is the culinary side of things. And like you said, it's the end of the line,
Hmm.
but it's almost like you want to do the honor for the animal in the
Yeah.
process at that point. What's the, what's the whole point of this entire process if it's not going to be, honored and cared for at consuming, right? So at the end of the
Yeah.
line. So no, I love that. Are there any like favorite recipes that you make with venison, or like what's your favorite meat to cook?
Oh man. Well, so elk, I think chili. My kids, they like elk chili is like they just love it. I mean, I make pretty much everything like elk enchiladas or deer enchilada, like the that we normally would eat. But yeah, definitely chili. That's on my list to actually can this year is to can some venison chili. Because you go buy store-bought chili all the time. And it's so easy to just
Hmm.
throw a couple jars and heat them up and make chili dogs or just whatever. And so that's on my list to do is to can some venison this coming up, some chili at least, because I know that's something that my family will eat and like they like the most probably is probably
Hmm.
what I cook the most of.
That's like Brandon's signature is chili. He makes such good chili. Have you ever canned meat before?
I have not canned meat before. I just haven't really had the reason to, and
Right.
so the thing about canning is I love to do it and I do can a lot, but I can beef broth a lot, like beef broth and chicken broth, but we're a military family, so I can't do this huge stockpile because I know we're
Mm.
probably going to have to move. And so I do most of my meats I will freeze. And besides like broths, jellies, stuff that I know that's probably going to be consumed, I do a year harvest method. I guess I should pre-serve it or preface that what I would say is I do a year harvest method. So I can enough jelly or whatever to make it to the harvest to do it again.
Mm.
And I try to do a year around. Most stuff that you can only stays good for a year's time anyway. There are some things that are a little bit past that, but so that's usually what I try to keep up with is I know that I'm going to harvest, pickles or whatever it is again next year. So I'm only going to can enough for that because, if I would knew that I was going to be able to stay here for a long time and I could make this huge homestead pantry or root cellar, that's like a dream,
Yeah.
my husband only has 7 years left to retirement. So I'm like, it's in the future. I'm going to have that. So yeah. So I don't do a lot of stuff just because of space and moving. A freezer,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
you can, so
Oh yeah, we've moved full freezers.
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because there's no, I mean, and I've never canned meat either. I've thought about it. But like you, I mean, unless there's a power outage, which for us it's usually a freeze and we can throw it out in the snow anyway. That's the only time we've ever lost
Yeah.
power, like for an extended amount of time. And I was freaking out. I was like, well, technically it's below freezing outside. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that makes sense. If there's not a huge need for it, I didn't even think about you guys moving and like you technically, if you wanted this huge thing, you couldn't have it quite yet. It doesn't make any
Hmm.
sense. So yeah, that's very interesting perspective. And your husband, I've seen him post about hunting, but does he get to hunt between deployments? Do y'all hunt together? How does that work?
I definitely hunt more than my husband does just because it's kind of like my job. Or
Yeah.
that's like my excuse to hunt more than him, I guess. He didn't grow up hunting. None of his family, besides his uncle, was someone that actually that was the first person that fed him deer meat. And so he didn't really have that. that wasn't really like his heritage, I guess. And then when we started doing it in Georgia, then he actually hunted the most. That's when I had a lot of littles at the time too. He did a lot of spearfishing too in Hawaii when we lived there. Um, and so he does do stuff. He has killed deer, hogs, and he hunts on post as well, but not as much as I get to. And like I said, he has deployed and been gone a lot, and it usually just happens
Mhm.
to land during, the seasons of time. So then he just doesn't have the opportunity to go out as much. He's pretty busy with his job.
No, absolutely. He's in the Marines, correct?
He was in the Marine Corps. He's in the Army now. He inter-service transferred. He's a warrant officer in the Army.
Okay. Well, just I'm sure you hear it a lot, but thank y'all so much for your I mean, both of you. You're serving
Thank
him,
you.
he's serving our country. I mean, it's a huge importance to me. I have some family that we're ex-military. Brandon has family as well, and it's not something that we chose to do. But at the same time, in high school, I was like, oh, I want to serve my country, and it just I have so much respect for it, and I really appreciate what you guys do and everything that you sacrifice. Really, at this point, I just want to make sure
Yeah,
I note
thank
that.
you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
Um, no, it's truly sacrifice. Like that's the biggest thing is that
Yeah.
you're doing so many amazing things, but I'm like, how like you're very high functioning.
Yeah.
You obviously have a way to control your and compartmentalize for your kids and for your
Yeah.
husband and for your profession, and so it's super impressive all around. And there's a lot of respect coming
I
from my
tell
end for sure.
Thank you. I tell a lot of moms that, you hear the expression, I have a lot on my plate right now. And I said, you have to know what kind of plate you're holding. And it might be a little dessert dish sometimes. I'm aware that I'm holding a turkey platter and I'm able to let it pile up a little bit. Okay. Not all the time in my life have I been able to do that. Postpartum, adjusting to another child or a new place when we move somewhere. We've lived in California, Hawaii, Florida, and now we're back in Oklahoma. And moves and all those things. I haven't always had the ability to hold a turkey platter. And so I think that's a thing that I talk to moms a lot about in my content is if you want to be outdoors, it might not look like you solo hunting an elk. It might look like you taking your kids to the park and identifying trees. There's
Yeah.
different stages of life that you're in, but how can you grow in that stage? There was a lot of time that I wanted to learn how to turkey hunt. I have an elk call hanging from my truck, and every time I'd get in my truck, I would do it. My kids probably got so annoyed, to the point where actually my oldest son can do a cow call without even having anything in his mouth. He can just do it. And but where are you at in your life? And find how you can learn doing that. You might be doing conservation, trash pickups, seed planting, something that you could do, not necessarily the actual hunt, but I try to shed light on those things and let your kids get involved. We do trash cleanups. We do all types. Every time we go out, we take a trash bag. Every time we go out on a hike, and foraging, learning what's in your local area, and
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of a side note, but I just like preach that to moms. Know what you can
Well,
the stage of life you're in.
I love that analogy. Yeah, I love that the turkey platter versus the dessert plate. That's
Yeah,
something that I can visualize that very easily, and it makes a lot of sense. And like I said this to you earlier, I don't have kids yet. I look forward to having kids. Brandon and I are getting married this month. Now that I say it's this month,
I know it's exciting.
but it's very excited about it. But we've always wanted kids. We talked about that in the very beginning of our relationship, so I look forward to it. And I did see your post. I believe it was a couple days ago about, going out and having the kids help you find scraps of stuff that just doesn't belong outdoors and putting that in trash and
Hmm.
making sure that it is removed from that area for the wildlife and the better of that environment. And it just there's so many facets. And that's I think what you're touching on is like it's not just hunting. It's just being outside and caring for our planet. I mean, it sounds so hippy dippy tree hugger, but at the same
Yeah.
time, that's something that I think all humans can agree on
Hmm.
in some form or fashion. It's just how do we get that implemented at a larger scale without fighting each other? about hunting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, it's a long-term battle, but the more education and the more opportunities there is for people to get introduced to it, starting at that level is so important. So I love to hear that that's something that you preach and that you know, instill in women that don't really know how to get their kids involved outside.
Yeah.
And the fact that you, like you said, your hunting chances might be lower, but you're getting them out there. It's so important.
Mm-hmm.
I did not grow up hunting either. My dad had a lease in South Texas, and I didn't get to go. I mean, it was just one of those things that it was his thing. And so we had venison, but I was never like involved with it being dropped off. And I mean, we rode horses. That was our outdoor activity. And we'd go on trail rides and things like that. But just, it's one of those things with hunting that I feel there's, like you said earlier, there's a whole, it's not just one time thing. It's like you prepare, you hunt, you cook, I don't want to say package, you process your meat. And then it's just such a full circle experience. And I really enjoy the fact that, you know, we can share that, you're sharing that with others, and that just continues to reach more and more people through social media. It's really impressive.
Yeah, and that's just the goal is to, I think we're past the point of paid models on social media. People want to follow people. I say that all the time. People want to follow people. We, kind of started with like reality TV, but the social media has really expanded that, and they want to see how you're doing it, and then they can replicate that or figure out a way that, they can do that. And so for me, growing up, I thought I was the only Black country girl in life. Like that was just like a thing. I was like, I don't know there's other girls doing this because it just wasn't something in the 90s that was really publicized, And so when I get on social media and I have other moms messaging me pictures of their daughters harvesting deer and they're like, you're her favorite account. She wants you to see this. I'm like, this is exactly why I do it because I know there's this one mom, she messages me all the time. She's like, literally my daughter, she doesn't hunt, but her daughter does. And she says, she's like, you're my daughter's favorite account. And so they share her harvest pictures with me. And I'm like, that's why I do it, because I want to be representation for another generation, for another mom. When I have like my friend, she's never hunted in her life. And she went and harvested her first pheasant. She lives in Kansas last year. And I love that. I love to see that she's like, oh, I finally was able to get away and do this. And it's an accomplishment. And as a mom, as a woman in general, going out there and hunting in a male-dominated space is not always, it could be really intimidating. And so when you're creating content, I want it to be relatable. I want women to feel like it's a welcome space, feel like they're learning, educating, and just feel like inspired to go, I know a lot of moms that I wish I could do that. I'm like, well, you probably can, just maybe not right now. So take your kids and go hiking, take your kids and go bird watching in your backyard, learn what species you can hunt, learn the seasons, learn all these things. And so, yeah, I really strive to be an encouragement and inspiration and create a community way more than I want to be like an influencer that's like looked up, to or something. I'm just a mom too. Like, and I'm a hot mess and there's probably a pile of laundry somewhere and my kids needing a snack, so.
All the relatable things, right? Even for those of us who don't have kids, it's just life in general. I mean, I have so much respect for you because it's like, you don't have to do any of that. You can live your life and not publicize any of it.
Yeah.
And you just feel a purpose and you're driven to share that in order to impact other people. And it truly shows, because earlier when I asked about sponsorships, you're like, well, I really don't have that many. And that's not really my goal. I could just tell that was kind of the vibe.
Yeah.
And you just kind of confirm that with just like, it's not about this paid model. It's not about, ad dollars. It's not about like putting somebody's name behind you. It's you. And the very few sponsors that you do bring on are going to be very true to you. And you can tell that you've been very selective with who you work with or who you even mention in your posts. And so that's so fresh and authentic. And I think you're right. I mean, I work in social media professionally, and I do think that the paid model is starting to, especially for non-product marketing, like for actual, like if you're talking about any kind of lifestyle, I just lost my train of thought. I guess what I'm trying to say is if you're not in the beauty industry, for example, or
Mhm.
like the hair industry, like those high fashion, high dollar industries have really large budgets, whereas like some of these outdoor firearms in our spaces, they're starting to realize that they're going to have more of an impact through the people that they're working with, not
Yeah.
necessarily the quantity, but the quality,
Hmm.
and the audience, and how they resonate with their audience, how they've built their community, and how important that is versus how big their community is.
Right.
And so that's such a huge point to know that you know that, and that you've
Hmm.
educated yourself and you've experienced the same thing. There's a lot of
For
positive
sure.
shifts, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well,
And
Bethany, go ahead.
I was saying, I definitely, this is definitely taken on a career path for me, more than I even imagined whenever I first started writing and sharing. And I definitely want to work with people, but like you said, I'm definitely selective because I want to represent a company that also, whenever a company looks for somebody, they want somebody that's going to represent them in a certain fashion. It's the same thing as the companies that I take on. I want it to be products that I actually use. I want to be products that I've actually tested, that, I believe in, that would represent me well as at the same, and I'm also going to be associated with all the other influencers and people that they take on at the same time. And I definitely don't take that lightly. I was super excited to pick up Rocky Mountain Hunt calls this year. And so that's been new, and I'm looking forward to that. And so it's definitely happening. But it's God's time. So I'll leave it at that. And I'm super excited to see where it goes.
Oh, I am too. I am so excited. Just knowing you the past, 2 to 3 years and watching your journey, it's been so exciting. And I look forward to seeing you next month at the POMA
Yes.
conference.
I know, I'm so excited.
And we're going to have a great time. I think we have a lot of good sessions on there. I think the AI in the outdoor industry is going to be a
Yes.
huge session, just to give you guys a teaser about what we talk about. We've got some great speakers, so y'all should check it out. But anyway, honestly, we covered so much more than I thought we would. And I really
Yeah.
appreciate your time and coming on here. And you're so well spoken, and you really are true and understand what your mission and your passions are, and a lot of the things that keep you grounded. And I'm very impressed, honestly. I mean, you have so many
Thank
things
you.
on your
Thank you very much.
on your turkey plate.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I do have a lot of things, but I think once you find your why and you're just authentic to people, I definitely don't want to lose myself in the industry. I want the industry to embrace me, who I am, and so just share in this space, and I really appreciate that, though. And thanks for having me on. And I'm glad that we were able to talk. And I'm super excited about next month. And Poma's always been a blessing. I think that's also a Poma thing is a lot of people ask, like, what you can do. How can I market myself as a freelancer? Poma is such a great one, man. That was so great for me going to Poma, and the opportunities that came from going there really have like helped me. And so I highly recommend, if you're in freelancing, content creating, media in general, to make time for something like that because it is a career changer.
Oh, no, and I can echo that statement. Absolutely, 100%. Because we've been doing some work with the National Shooting Sports Foundation, so it's one of those things where it's the relationship builder for sure, and the people themselves. Oh my gosh, it's a small group. It's not a huge conference, y'all. I mean, this
Yeah.
is an intimate conference with great sessions. We both enjoy it. We have a lot of time after hours together. Plus, the range day is not bad.
Yeah,
Getting to test out
super
all the firearms and all the new
fun.
doodads and accessories and everything. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I mean, again, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to bringing you on again at some point. We'll be
For
talking
sure.
more hunting stories, or when I have
Yes,
my own kiddos, and I think it'll be fun to continue this relationship as far as getting some podcast episodes with you.
for sure. Thank you for having me on.